And you really thought I wouldn't find out?
The rain hammered against our Victorian's windows like bullets, and I should have taken that as a warning. Instead, I poured another round of whiskey and watched my wife Vivian shuffle the cards with those perfectly manicured fingers that had signed our marriage certificate 8 years ago. Back then, I thought I was the luckiest architect in Maine. Tonight, I was about to discover just how wrong a man could be. Truth or dare, Nick? Vivian's voice had that honey-sweet tone that usually meant trouble. Her auburn hair caught the lamplight, and those green eyes sparkled with something I mistook for playfulness. My younger brother Eric lounged in the leather chair across from me, his designer shirt unbuttoned one button too many, that cocky grin plastered across his face like he owned the world. At 38, he still acted like the golden boy who could charm his way out of anything. Our parents had always favored him, and apparently so did everyone else. Sienna Marlowe, Vivian's best friend and the town's most successful realtor, perched on the edge of the sofa like a vulture waiting for someone to fall apart. Her bleached blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her lips curved in that predatory smile she wore when closing deals. "Come on, Nick," Eric chuckled, swirling his whiskey. "Don't be such a stick in the mud. It's just a game." Just a game. Right. In my 42 years on this planet, I'd learned that nothing was ever just anything when Eric was involved. "Truth," I said, because I'd always prided myself on honesty. Another mistake to add to the growing pile. Vivian leaned forward, her silk blouse revealing just enough cleavage to remind me why I'd fallen for her in the first place. "What's the one thing about our marriage that you'd change if you could?" I studied her face, looking for the trap. There was always a trap with Vivian. She was an HR consultant, which meant she knew exactly how to manipulate people's words against them. But the whiskey had loosened my tongue, and the question seemed harmless enough. "I'd want you to trust me more," I said. "Sometimes I feel like you're always testing me. Like you're waiting for me to fail." The room went quiet except for the storm outside. Eric's grin faltered for just a second, and Sienna shifted uncomfortably. Vivian's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. "Interesting," she murmured, then turned to Eric. "Your turn, brother-in-law. Truth or dare?" "Truth," Eric said, his confidence returning. "I can handle whatever you've got." Vivian smiled, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. "Have you ever wanted something that belonged to Nick?" Eric's face went red, and he took a long gulp of whiskey. That's a loaded question, Viv." "That's the point of the game," Sienna said, her voice sharp with anticipation. "Answer it." Eric looked at me, then at Vivian, then back at his glass. Yeah, I have." "What?" I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want the answer. "Your life," Eric said quietly. "Your success, your house, your business. Everything just came so easy to you, Nick. The golden architect with the perfect wife and the perfect life. Sometimes I wondered what it would be like to have all that." The honesty hit me like a slap. I'd known Eric resented my success, but hearing him say it out loud stung more than I expected. Vivian reached over and squeezed Eric's hand, a gesture that seemed oddly intimate. "Truth or dare, Vivian?" Sienna asked, her eyes glittering with malicious glee. "Truth," Vivian said without hesitation. "I'm feeling honest tonight." Sienna's smile widened. "What's your deepest, darkest fantasy? The one you've never told anyone?" Vivian didn't even pause. She looked straight at me, her green eyes boring into mine, and said, "I fantasize about you watching me with Eric." The words hung in the air like smoke from a tool barrel. My brain struggled to process what she'd just said. Eric went pale, then red, then pale again. Sienna looked like Christmas had come early. "Jesus, Viv," I managed to say. That's quite a fantasy." She shrugged, as casual as if she'd just mentioned the weather. "You asked for truth. That's mine." I forced a laugh, the sound hollow and bitter in my throat. "Well, that's certainly honest." But even as I tried to play it off as a joke, I noticed things. The way Eric wouldn't meet my eyes. The way Vivian's hand lingered on his arm when she reached for her glass. The way they both seemed to know exactly where the other was at all times, like dancers who'd rehearsed their steps. The game continued for another hour, but the mood had shifted. The questions became safer, the dares more mundane. But I kept watching, kept noticing. The shared glances, the inside jokes, the way they finished each other's sentences. By midnight, Eric and Sienna had gone to their respective rooms. Eric in the guest room down the hall, Sienna in the converted attic space she used when she stayed over. Vivian and I went through our usual bedtime routine in silence. She brushed her teeth, applied her night cream, and slipped into the silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary. "That was fun," she said as she climbed into bed beside me. "We should do it more often." "Yeah," I said. "Fun." She kissed my cheek, her lips cool against my skin. "Good night, darling." "Good night." I lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathing even out as she fell asleep. The storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to press against the windows. I should have been tired. It was past 1 in the morning. But my mind kept replaying the evening's events. "Your deepest, darkest fantasy is watching me with Eric." The words echoed in my head like a broken record. I told myself it was just the whiskey talking, just a provocative answer to a provocative question. But the more I thought about it, the more the pieces started falling into place. Eric's frequent visits over the past year, always when I was working late or out of town. Vivian's sudden interest in girls' nights that somehow always included Eric. The way she'd started dressing differently when he was around, more revealing, more seductive. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could and padded barefoot down the hallway. The guest room door was closed, but I could see light underneath it. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard voices, low, urgent whispers that made my blood run cold. "We can't keep doing this," Eric was saying. "He's getting suspicious." "No, he's not," Vivian replied. "Nick's too trusting, too naive. He'd never believe his perfect little brother would betray him." "What if he finds out?" "He won't. And even if he does, what's he going to do? Nick's not exactly the confrontational type. He'll just suffer in silence like he always does." Their laughter was like knives twisting in my chest. I stood there for another minute, listening to them discuss me like I was some pathetic fool before creeping back to my bedroom. Vivian was still asleep, or pretending to be. I packed a bag in the dark, moving as quietly as possible. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, my laptop, everything I'd need for a few days away while I figured out what to do next. The wedding photo on my dresser caught the moonlight, and I stared at it for a long moment. Vivian in her white dress, radiant and beautiful, promising to love and honor me till death do us part. Turns out my wife's fantasy was reality, and I was the only one who hadn't been invited to the party. I left through the kitchen door, the one that didn't squeak, and drove away into the night. In my rearview mirror, the house looked peaceful and innocent, like any other suburban home where normal people lived normal lives. But I wasn't normal people anymore. I was a man who just discovered that his entire life was a lie. I spent the weekend at a cheap motel outside town, the kind of place where the carpet was stained and the ice machine hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. It gave me time to think, to plan, and most importantly, to investigate. My architectural firm, Harrow and Associates, had been my life's work. I'd built it from nothing, starting in a cramped office above a bakery and growing it into one of Maine's most respected design firms. We employed 15 people, had clients across New England, and had won awards for our innovative residential designs. But as I sat in that dingy motel room with my laptop, I started to see cracks in the foundation I'd thought was solid. The first red flag was in my email. Vivian had always been supportive of my work, often helping with administrative tasks and client relations. She had access to my business email account, something I'd never questioned because I trusted her completely. Now, that trust felt like the punchline to a cruel joke. I started with the obvious, searching for Eric's name in my sent folder. What I found made my stomach turn. Dozens of emails sent from my account to potential clients, business partners, and vendors. Emails I'd never written, never seen, never authorized. The pattern was subtle but devastating. Promises I couldn't keep, commitments that made me look unprofessional, inflammatory responses to legitimate complaints. Someone had been systematically undermining my reputation, and they'd been using my own email account to do it. But the real smoking tool was buried deeper in my files, financial documents that had been altered, contracts that bore my signature but contained terms I'd never agreed to, and most incriminating of all, a series of transfers from the company account to a private account I'd never opened. On paper, it looked like I'd been embezzling from my own firm. My hands shook as I scrolled through the evidence of my own destruction. Every document was perfectly crafted, every detail designed to make me look guilty. This wasn't a crime of passion or a spur-of-the-moment betrayal. This was a carefully orchestrated campaign to destroy me, and it had been going on for months. I called Terry Doyle, an ex-cop who'd left the force after a corruption scandal that wasn't his fault. He'd been working as a private investigator for the past 5 years, and more importantly, he was one of the few people I trusted completely. Nick? Terry's gravelly voice was thick with sleep. Jesus, what time is it? Terry, I need your help. Can you meet me? Something in my tone must have gotten through to him because his voice sharpened immediately. Where are you? I gave him the motel address, and he arrived 20 minutes later with a box of donuts and a thermos of coffee that could strip paint. Terry was built like a fire hydrant, short, thick, and nearly indestructible. His gray hair was buzzed military short, and his face looked like it had been carved from granite by someone with a grudge against smooth surfaces. You look like heck, he said, settling into the motel's single chair. What's going on? I told him everything, the game of truth or dare, the overheard conversation, the doctored emails, and forged documents. Terry listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Son of a witch, he muttered when I finished. Your own brother? My own brother, I confirmed. The question is, what do I do about it? Terry was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence on my laptop screen. First thing we need to do is figure out how deep this goes. If they've been planning this for months, there's got to be more than just email hacking and document forgery. He was right, of course. Over the next 3 days, we uncovered the full scope of their betrayal. Terry had contacts throughout the state. Former cops, security guards, bartenders, and hotel clerks who remembered faces and weren't shy about sharing information for the right price. The timeline was devastating in its thoroughness. Eric and Vivian had been having an affair for over a year, meeting at hotels, restaurants, and even in my own home when I was away. But the affair was just the beginning. They'd been planning to take over my business, destroy my reputation, and leave me with nothing. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. First, they'd use the forged documents to make it look like I'd been embezzling money. Then, when the scandal broke, Eric would step in as the concerned brother, offering to buy out my share of the company for pennies on the dollar to save the family name. Vivian would file for divorce, claiming emotional trauma and financial hardship, and walk away with half of everything I'd worked for. Meanwhile, Sienna would use her connections in the real estate world to spread rumors about my financial irregularities, making it impossible for me to start over in the same industry. It was a perfect crime, and it almost worked. The key word being almost. They made one mistake, Terry said as we sat in his office, surrounded by photographs, documents, and financial records. They got greedy. He pointed to a bank statement showing the mysterious account that had been receiving the embezzled funds. This account? It's not in your name. It's in Eric's. And the deposits don't match the supposed embezzlement dates. Some of them are from before the thefts allegedly started. I studied the documents, feeling a cold smile spread across my face. They created the account first, then backdated the embezzlement to cover it up. Exactly, and that's not the only inconsistency. Look at this. Terry showed me a series of photographs taken by a security camera outside a hotel in Portland. The timestamps showed Eric and Vivian entering a room together on a Tuesday afternoon in March. The same Tuesday, I'd supposedly sent an inflammatory email to our biggest client from my office computer. I have digital forensics that prove you were logged into your office computer at the exact time this photo was taken, Terry said. Unless you can be in 2 places at once, someone else sent that email. The evidence was overwhelming, but I knew it wouldn't be enough for the police. The forgeries were too good, the digital trail too complex. Even if I could prove my innocence, the scandal would destroy my reputation and my business. No, this called for a different kind of justice. What are you thinking? Terry asked, studying my expression. I'm thinking it's time to play their game, I said. But by my rules, Terry grinned, and for the first time in days, I felt like I might actually win this thing. Monday morning, I walked into my office like nothing had happened. My employees, good people who'd worked for me for years, greeted me with the usual mix of coffee-fueled enthusiasm and Monday morning complaints. None of them knew that their jobs hung in the balance, that their boss was fighting for his professional life. Marty Kowalski, my project manager and the closest thing I had to a best friend at work, knocked on my office door around 10. Marty was a former boxer who'd found his calling in construction management after a career-ending injury. He was built like a brick wall and had the loyalty of a golden retriever. Boss, we need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. What's up, Marty? He shifted uncomfortably, his massive hands fidgeting with his hard hat. It's about your brother. I saw him last Tuesday at the Riverside Motel with a woman. Wasn't sure if I should mention it, but what? The woman looked a lot like your wife. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, I was celebrating. Marty had just handed me another piece of evidence, and more importantly, he'd proven that I had at least one ally in this fight. Are you sure it was them? Marty nodded grimly. Positive. I was there meeting a contractor about the Morrison project. Saw them going into room 237 together, real cozy-like. Didn't seem like a family meeting, if you know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean, Marty. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Shoot. Have you noticed anything strange around here lately? Emails sent from my account that don't sound like me? Documents that seem off? Anything that made you think twice? Marty's face darkened. Now that you mention it, yeah. That email you sent to the Hendersons last month telling them to find another architect if they didn't like our timeline. That didn't sound like you at all. You've never talked to clients like that. That's because I didn't send it. I spent the next hour bringing Marty into the loop, showing him the evidence Terry and I had compiled. His reaction was everything I'd hoped for: outrage, loyalty, and a burning desire for revenge that matched my own. Those bastards, he growled. What do you want me to do? For now, just keep your eyes and ears open. If Eric shows up here, I want to know about it immediately. And Marty, this stays between us until I say otherwise. You got it, boss. That afternoon, I put the first part of my plan into motion. I called Eric's cell phone, making sure to sound defeated and confused. Eric, it's Nick. Can you meet me for drinks tonight? I need to talk to someone. Sure, bro. Everything okay? You sound upset. The concern in his voice was so perfectly fake that I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle him. Instead, I played my part. It's Vivian. I think she might be having an affair. There was a pause, just long enough for Eric to compose himself. Jesus, Nick. Are you sure? No, that's just it. I'm not sure of anything anymore. Can you meet me at the Glass Hammer around 8? The Glass Hammer was the kind of dive bar where construction workers and truck drivers went to forget their troubles. It was dark, loud, and perfect for what I had in mind. I arrived early and positioned myself at a corner table where I could see the entire bar. Terry was already there, nursing a beer and pretending to watch the football game on the ancient television above the bar. Marty sat at the bar itself, looking like any other working man unwinding after a long day. Eric walked in at exactly 8 o'clock, dressed in his usual expensive casual wear that screamed, "I'm too good for this place." He spotted me immediately and made his way over, his face a mask of brotherly concern. "Nick, you look terrible," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What's going on?" I'd spent hours practicing this conversation, making sure I hit just the right note of confused husband and trusting brother. "I think Vivian's cheating on me." Eric's eyes widened in perfectly feigned shock. "What? That's crazy. Vivian loves you." "Does she? Because lately it feels like she's a million miles away. She's always working late, always has somewhere else to be. And the other night during that game when she said that thing about fantasizing about you," "That was just the alcohol talking," Eric said quickly. "You know how Vivian gets when she's had a few drinks?" I leaned forward, letting desperation creep into my voice. But what if it wasn't? What if she really meant it? Eric reached across the table and patted my hand in a gesture that made my skin crawl. "Nick, you're being paranoid. Vivian would never cheat on you, especially not with me. I'm your brother." The irony of that statement almost made me laugh out loud. Instead, I let my shoulders slump in defeat. "You're right. I'm probably just being crazy. It's just, work has been so stressful lately, and I feel like everything's falling apart." "What's going on at work?" And there it was, the opening he'd been waiting for. I could see the anticipation in his eyes, the barely contained excitement of a predator closing in on wounded prey. "Some of our clients have been complaining about my work, saying I'm unprofessional and unreliable. There are financial discrepancies that I can't explain. I'm starting to think someone might be sabotaging me." Eric's concern looked genuine, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. "That's terrible, Nick. Do you have any idea who might be doing something like that?" "No, that's just it. It has to be someone with access to my email, my office, my files, someone I trust." I watched Eric's face carefully, looking for any crack in his performance. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across his features. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Well, whoever it is, we'll figure it out," Eric said. "Family sticks together, right?" "Right," I agreed, raising my beer in a mock toast. "Family?" We drank in silence for a moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in Eric's head. He was probably wondering how much I knew, how close I was to discovering the truth. Little did he know I already had everything I needed to destroy him. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. This was just the opening move in a much longer game, and I intended to savor every moment of their downfall. "I should probably get home," I said, standing up and throwing a 20 on the table. "Thanks for listening, Eric. It means a lot to know I can count on you." "Always, bro, always." I walked out of the bar, leaving Eric sitting alone with his thoughts and his guilt. As I reached my car, I saw Marty approaching from the shadows. "Did you get it?" I asked. He held up a small digital recorder and grinned. "Every word. Your brother's got quite the talent for lying through his teeth." "That's not the only talent he's got," I said grimly, "but it's about to be his downfall." The next morning, I found a message waiting on my office voicemail. It was from Robert Henderson, the client who'd supposedly received that inflammatory email from me. "Mr. Harrow, I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. I'm glad we were able to clear up that misunderstanding about the timeline. Your brother explained that the email was sent by mistake, and we appreciate you taking the time to apologize personally. We're looking forward to continuing our working relationship." I played the message 3 times, my anger growing with each repetition. Eric had gone to my clients behind my back, spinning some story about mistaken emails and misunderstandings. He was trying to position himself as the responsible brother, cleaning up my supposed messes. It was a smart move, I had to admit. But it was also a mistake, because now I knew exactly how he planned to take over my business, and I was going to use that knowledge to destroy him. The town fundraiser gala was Millbrook's social event of the year, a chance for the local elite to dress up, drink expensive wine, and pretend they cared about whatever charity was fashionable that season. This year's cause was the Children's Hospital, which meant everyone would be extra generous with their checkbooks and their sanctimonious speeches. I arrived alone, telling everyone who asked that Vivian was feeling under the weather. In reality, she was at home, probably planning her next move with Eric and Sienna. The 3 conspirators had been meeting regularly since my confrontation with Eric at the bar, no doubt worried that I was getting too close to the truth. If only they knew how close I really was. The gala was held at the Millbrook Country Club, a sprawling complex of manicured lawns, tennis courts, and old money pretensions. I worked the room like the successful businessman I was supposed to be, shaking hands, making small talk, and keeping my ears open for useful information. That's when I overheard Margaret Whitfield, the town's most prolific gossip, talking to her bridge club friends near the silent auction table. "Did you hear about Nick Harrow's business troubles?" she was saying, her voice pitched just loud enough to be heard by anyone within 20 feet. "Apparently, there have been some financial irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" asked Helen Morrison, whose husband was one of my clients. "Embezzlement, from what I understand. His own brother had to step in to try to save the company's reputation." My blood turned to ice. The story was already spreading, just as Eric and Vivian had planned. Soon, everyone in town would believe I was a thief and a fraud. My business would be ruined, my reputation destroyed, and Eric would swoop in as the hero who saved the family name. I was admiring the elegant simplicity of their plan when I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Nick, there you are." I turned to find Sienna Marlowe behind me, resplendent in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Her smile was warm and friendly, the perfect mask for the viper underneath. "Sienna, you look lovely tonight." "Thank you. I was just talking to the Hendersons about their new house project. They mentioned they might be looking for a new architect." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Sienna was using her connections to poison my professional relationships, just as we'd suspected. But 2 could play that game. "Actually, I'm glad you brought that up," I said, my voice carrying just far enough to reach Margaret Whitfield's eager ears. "I've been meaning to ask you about that property you sold to the Johnsons last year. The one with the foundation problems that didn't show up in the inspection?" Sienna's smile faltered. "I don't know what you mean." "Of course you do. The house on Maple Street with the cracked foundation that's going to cost them $50,000 to repair. I heard they're considering a lawsuit against their realtor for failing to disclose known defects." It was a complete lie, but it sounded plausible enough to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of everyone listening. Sienna's face went pale, and I could see her calculating the potential damage to her reputation. That's not accurate, she stammered. Isn't it? Well, I'm sure the truth will come out eventually. It always does. I excused myself and moved toward the bar, leaving Sienna to deal with the sudden chill in the conversations around her. It was a small victory, but it felt good to land the first punch in what was shaping up to be a very public war. The evening's entertainment was a jazz quartet that played background music while people bid on auction items and made networking connections. I was nursing a scotch and planning my next move when Eric appeared at my elbow. Nick, we need to talk. His usual confidence was cracked around the edges, and I could see the strain in his eyes. The pressure was getting to him, which meant my strategy was working. Sure, Eric, what's on your mind? Not here, somewhere private. He led me through the country club's main building to a small conference room used for board meetings and private functions. The room was empty, dimly lit by a single table lamp, and far enough from the main party that we wouldn't be overheard. What the heck do you think you're doing? Eric demanded as soon as the door closed behind us. I'm not sure what you mean. Don't play dumb with me, Nick. That little performance with Sienna, the questions you've been asking around town, you're making people nervous. Good, I said, dropping the pretense of confusion. They should be nervous, especially the ones with something to hide. Eric's face flushed red. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know Eric. I know about you and Vivian. I know about the forged documents, the embezzlement scheme, the plan to destroy my business and steal everything I've worked for. For a moment, Eric looked like he might deny it. Then his shoulders sagged, and the mask finally slipped away. How long have you known? Long enough. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Eric straightened up, and I saw a flash of the arrogance that had defined him since childhood. What can you do about it? You don't have any proof. Don't I? I pulled out my phone and played a recording of our conversation at the Glass Hammer, Eric's voice clear and incriminating as he lied to my face about Vivian's faithfulness. Then I showed him photographs of him and Vivian entering the motel, bank records proving the embezzlement scheme, and digital forensics proving the emails had been sent from outside my office. Eric's face went white. Where did you get all this? I have friends, Eric. Friends who know how to find the truth when people try to hide it. You can't prove anything, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Can't I? I have enough evidence to send you to prison for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. I have enough to destroy Vivian's career and Sienna's real estate license. I have enough to ruin all three of you. Eric was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence of his crimes. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. What do you want? I want you to confess. All three of you. I want a full admission of what you've done, and I want you to make it right. And if we don't, I smiled, and it felt cold as winter morning. Then I'll destroy you, all of you, completely and utterly. Eric tried to bluster, to reclaim some of his lost bravado. You don't have the balls, Nick. You never did. You're too soft, too nice, too worried about what people will think. You're right, I said. The old Nick was all of those things, but the old Nick didn't know his wife was sleeping with his brother. The old Nick didn't know his family was trying to destroy him. The old Nick is gone, Eric, and the new Nick doesn't care at all what people think. I left him standing in that conference room, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal and the wreckage of his plans. As I walked back to the main party, I felt lighter than I had in months. The war had officially begun, and I just made the opening move. But Eric and Vivian weren't going to surrender quietly. If anything, I just made them more dangerous. They'd be desperate now, and desperate people do desperate things. I was counting on it. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find chaos. 3 of my biggest clients had called to cancel their contracts, citing concerns about the company's financial stability and professional conduct. 2 of my best employees had submitted their resignations, effective immediately, and there was a message from my business insurance company requesting a meeting to discuss irregularities in recent claims. Eric and Vivian had declared war. I called an emergency staff meeting, gathering my remaining employees in the conference room. These were good people, architects, designers, project managers, and administrative staff who'd helped build my company from the ground up. They deserved to know what was happening, even if I couldn't tell them everything. I know there have been rumors, I began, looking each of them in the eye. Rumors about financial problems, about my professional conduct, about the future of this company. I want you to hear the truth from me. I explained that someone had been sabotaging the business, using forged documents and fake emails to damage our reputation. I told them about the investigation I'd been conducting, about the evidence I'd gathered, and about my determination to clear the company's name and my own. What I didn't tell them was that the saboteur was my own brother, or that my wife was his accomplice. I understand if some of you want to leave, I said. This is going to get worse before it gets better, and I won't hold it against anyone who decides they can't weather this storm. Marty was the first to speak up. Boss, I've worked for you for 8 years. In all that time, you've never lied to me, never cheated me, never treated me with anything but respect. If you say someone's trying to frame you, that's good enough for me. One by one, the others voiced their support. Sarah Chen, my lead designer, said she'd rather work for an honest man with a damaged reputation than a dishonest one with a clean record. Tom Bradley, our newest hire, said he'd learned more in 6 months working for me than in 2 years at his previous job. By the end of the meeting, I knew I had a team I could count on. More importantly, I had witnesses to my character and my conduct, people who could testify that I wasn't the kind of man who would embezzle from his own company or treat clients with disrespect. That afternoon, Terry called with news that made my blood boil and my heart race at the same time. Your brother just met with a lawyer, he said. James Morrison, the one who specializes in business acquisitions and hostile takeovers. What kind of meeting? The kind where they discuss buying out a failing business for pennies on the dollar. I have a contact in Morrison's office who says Eric's planning to make you an offer to buy your share of the company. How generous of him. Gets better. Vivian filed a legal separation this morning. She's claiming emotional distress and financial hardship, asking for temporary spousal support and half of all marital assets. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. It was exactly what we'd expected, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. How long do I have? Morrison's secretary says Eric has an appointment to see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Vivian's lawyer will probably serve you with papers sometime this week. Perfect. That gives me just enough time to prepare my counterattack. That evening, I drove to the house I'd shared with Vivian for 8 years. It looked exactly the same from the outside. The Victorian architecture I'd lovingly restored, the garden Vivian had planted, the white picket fence that had seemed like a symbol of our perfect life together. Inside, the house felt like a tomb. Vivian was in the kitchen, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. She was dressed in the blue dress I'd always said was my favorite, and her hair was styled the way she'd worn it on our first date. For a moment, I almost believed she was the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Nick, she said, turning to greet me with a smile that could have melted ice. You're home early. I was just making your favorite beef bourguignon with roasted vegetables. How thoughtful, I said, accepting the glass of wine she offered me. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to cook for my husband? I studied her face, looking for cracks in the performance. She was good. I had to give her that. If I didn't know better, I might have believed this was a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Vivian, we need to talk. Of course, darling, but let's eat first. I spent all afternoon on this meal. We sat at the dining room table like a normal married couple, making small talk about our days and sharing a bottle of expensive wine. Vivian was charming and attentive, laughing at my jokes and asking about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. It was the best performance she'd ever given, and it made me sick to my stomach. This is delicious, I said, taking another bite of the beef. You always were a wonderful cook. I'm glad you like it. I know things have been difficult lately. I thought maybe we could work on getting back to where we used to be. Where we used to be, I repeated. You mean back when I didn't know you were sleeping with my brother? Vivian's fork clattered against her plate. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw the cold calculation underneath. Then she recovered, her eyes filling with tears that looked almost real. Nick, I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything, Vivian. The affair, the embezzlement scheme, the plan to destroy my business and steal everything I've worked for. I know about the forged documents, the fake emails, the lies you've been spreading around town. I know all of it. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see her weighing her options. Deny everything and hope I was bluffing? Confess and try to negotiate? Attack and try to turn the tables? She chose option 3. You self-righteous bastard, she snarled, her beautiful face twisting with hatred. You think you're so perfect, so noble, so much better than everyone else. But you're just a pathetic, boring little man who never gave me what I needed. And what was that, Vivian? What did you need that I didn't give you? Passion, excitement, a man who wasn't afraid to take what he wanted instead of asking permission for everything. Like Eric? Yes, like Eric. He's twice the man you'll ever be, and he actually appreciates what he has. I nodded slowly as if her words were sinking in. I see. And the embezzlement, the forged documents, the plan to destroy my business? Was that also about passion and excitement? Vivian's eyes narrowed. That was about survival. You think I was going to spend the rest of my life married to a failure? Your business was already declining. Your reputation was already damaged. We just accelerated the process. My reputation was damaged because you damaged it. Prove it. I smiled and pulled out my phone, showing her the same evidence I'd shown Eric. Bank records, digital forensics, photographs, recordings, everything needed to prove their guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Vivian's face went white as she scrolled through the files. Where did you get all this? I told you, I know everything. The question is, what are we going to do about it? What do you want? I want you to call off your lawyer. I want Eric to cancel his meeting with James Morrison. I want both of you to confess to what you've done and make full restitution for the damage you've caused. And if we don't, then I'll destroy you. Both of you. I'll send this evidence to the police, to the State Bar Association, to every client and business contact you've ever had. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you really are. Vivian was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence of her crimes. When she finally looked up, her expression was cold and calculating. You won't do it, she said. You're too weak, too concerned with your precious reputation. You'd rather suffer in silence than create a scandal. You're wrong, Vivian. I'm not the same man I was 2 weeks ago. That man trusted you, loved you, believed in you. That man is gone. I stood up from the table, leaving my half-finished meal behind. You have 24 hours to make your choice. After that, the decision will be out of your hands. As I walked toward the door, Vivian called after me. Nick, wait. We can work this out. We can find a solution that works for everyone. I turned back to look at her one last time. She was beautiful, intelligent, and utterly without conscience. I'd loved her once, but that felt like a lifetime ago. The time for negotiation is over, Vivian. You made your choice when you decided to betray me. Now you have to live with the consequences. I left her sitting at that dining room table, surrounded by the remnants of her last desperate gambit. Tomorrow, Eric would come to my office expecting to buy my business for a fraction of its worth. Instead, he was going to get the surprise of his life. The endgame was about to begin. Eric arrived at my office the next afternoon dressed like a man attending a funeral, his own, as it turned out. He wore his most expensive suit, carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's cars, and had the swagger of someone who thought he held all the winning cards. James Morrison accompanied him, a thin, sharp-faced lawyer who specialized in picking apart failing businesses like a vulture strips carrion. Morrison had represented half the hostile takeovers in the state over the past decade, and his reputation for ruthless efficiency was legendary. Nick, Eric said, settling into the chair across from my desk like he already owned it. Thanks for agreeing to meet with us. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Morrison opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Mr. Harrow, my client has asked me to present you with an offer to purchase your shares in Harrow and Associates. How generous. What's the offer? Given the company's current financial difficulties and reputation issues, we feel that $200,000 is a fair price for your 60% stake in the business. I almost laughed out loud. My share of the company was worth at least $2 million. Probably more. They were offering me 10 cents on the dollar for a business I'd built from nothing. That's quite an offer, I said. But I'm afraid I'll have to decline. Eric leaned forward, his mask of brotherly concern slipping slightly. Nick, be reasonable. The company's in trouble. The embezzlement allegations, the client complaints, the reputation damage, it's only going to get worse. This offer gives you a chance to walk away with something instead of losing everything. Embezzlement allegations, I repeated. That's an interesting phrase, almost like you know they're false. Morrison cleared his throat. Mr. Harrow, my client is trying to help you. But if you refuse this generous offer, he may have no choice but to pursue other legal remedies. Such as a lawsuit for damages to the company's reputation and financial standing, criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud, civil action for breach of fiduciary duty. I nodded thoughtfully. I see, so this isn't really an offer, it's extortion. Eric's face flushed red. It's not extortion, it's business. You're in trouble, Nick, and I'm offering you a way out. Am I in trouble, Eric? Or are you? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder of my own. Morrison's eyes sharpened as I spread the contents across my desk: bank records, digital forensics reports, photographs, and sworn affidavits from witnesses. What is this? Morrison asked. Evidence, I said simply. Evidence that proves every single embezzlement charge against me is false. Evidence that proves the documents bearing my signature are forgeries. Evidence that proves the emails sent from my account were actually sent from external IP addresses. Evidence that proves my brother and my wife have been conducting a systematic campaign to destroy my business and steal my assets. Eric's face went white as he recognized the bank records showing his secret account. Morrison's professional composure cracked as he read the digital forensics report, proving the emails had been forged. This is quite a collection, Morrison said carefully. But allegations are easy to make. Proving them in court is another matter entirely. You're absolutely right, I agreed. That's why I've already turned copies of everything over to the district attorney's office, the FBI's white-collar crime unit, and the State Bar Association. The silence in the room was deafening. Eric looked like he might throw up, and Morrison was rapidly calculating how to distance himself from what was obviously about to become a major scandal. There's more, I continued, enjoying the moment. I've also sent copies to every client, vendor, and business partner who received those forged emails, along with a detailed explanation of how they were created and who created them. You can't prove Eric was involved, Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. Can't I? I turned my laptop screen toward them, showing a video file. This is security footage from the Riverside Motel, showing Eric and Vivian entering room 237 together on March 15th, the same day one of those forged emails was sent to our biggest client. Eric finally found his voice. That doesn't prove anything about the emails. No, but this does. I played an audio recording of Eric's conversation with Sienna at the Glass Hammer, where he bragged about taking over my business and described me as a pathetic loser who deserves what's coming to him. Morrison was already packing his briefcase. Mr. Harrow, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My client may have acted hastily in making this offer. Perhaps we should postpone this meeting until what? Until Eric can destroy more evidence? Until Vivian can spread more lies? Until you can find a way to spin this into something that doesn't end with your client in federal prison? I stood up and walked around my desk, stopping directly in front of Eric's chair. My younger brother, the golden boy, the charmer, the one everyone loved, looked like a frightened child. Here's my counteroffer, Eric. You and Vivian confess to everything. You make full restitution for all damages to my business and my reputation. You both leave town and never come back. And maybe I don't press criminal charges. And if we don't, Eric asked weakly, then I destroy you, completely and utterly. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. A thief, a liar, and a pathetic excuse for a human being who tried to steal his own brother's life. Morrison stood up abruptly. Mr. Harrow, my client needs time to consider your proposal. We'll be in touch. You have 24 hours, I said. After that, the offer expires and the criminal charges proceed. They left my office like men walking to their execution, which in a way they were. I just destroyed Eric's plan, exposed his crimes, and given him a choice between voluntary exile and federal prison. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, I drove to the abandoned Millbrook textile factory on the outskirts of town. The building had been empty for 15 years, a victim of the economic changes that had transformed our small Maine community. It was the perfect place for a final confrontation, isolated, dramatic, and symbolic of everything Eric and Vivian had tried to do to my life. I'd sent them both messages asking for a meeting to discuss terms. They probably thought I was ready to negotiate, to find some middle ground that would let them escape the consequences of their actions. They were wrong. Vivian arrived first, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket that made her look like a character from a crime movie. She was still beautiful, but the stress of the past few days had carved lines around her eyes and mouth that makeup couldn't hide. Nick, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Thank you for coming. Eric showed up 10 minutes later, looking haggard and desperate. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by the nervous energy of a cornered animal. Okay, we're here, he said. What do you want? I want to give you one last chance to do the right thing. I'd set up a small table in the middle of the empty factory floor, complete with 3 chairs and a battery-powered lantern that cast dramatic shadows on the walls. It felt like a scene from a movie, which was exactly what I'd intended. "This is very theatrical," Vivian said, but I could hear the nervousness beneath her sarcasm. "I've always appreciated good theater. Please sit." They sat across from me, and for a moment, we looked like 3 old friends having a casual conversation. Except for the tension thick enough to cut with a knife and the evidence of their crimes spread across the table between us. "I've been thinking about your situation," I said conversationally, "and I've realized that my original offer was too generous." Eric's face went pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean that offering you a chance to confess and leave town was the old Nick talking. The trusting, forgiving Nick who believed family meant something, but that Nick is gone." I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces in the lamplight. "You see, I've discovered something interesting about myself over the past few weeks. I'm not nearly as nice as I thought I was. In fact, when someone tries to destroy my life, I have a remarkable capacity for revenge." "Nick, please," Vivian said. "We can work something out. We can find a solution that works for everyone." "Can we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already made your choice. You chose to betray me, to steal from me, to try to destroy everything I've worked for. And now you want me to help you escape the consequences?" I pulled out my phone and showed them a news article that had been published online an hour earlier. The headline read, "Local architect cleared of embezzlement charges. Wife and brother implicated in fraud scheme." "The story's already out there," I said. "By tomorrow morning, everyone in town will know exactly what you did. Your friends, your clients, your families. They'll all know that you're thieves and liars." Eric's hands were shaking. "You bastard! You self-righteous bastard! You've destroyed us." "No, Eric. You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Vivian was crying now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks in black streams. "Nick, please. I know we hurt you, but we can make this right. We can pay you back. We can apologize publicly. We can do whatever you want." "What I want," I said, standing up and walking around the table, "is for you to understand something. You thought I was weak. You thought I was stupid. You thought I would just roll over and let you steal my life." I stopped behind Eric's chair and put my hands on his shoulders. He flinched like I'd hit him. "But you were wrong. I'm not weak. I'm patient. I'm not stupid. I'm careful. And I don't just roll over. I plan and I execute and I win." I walked back to my chair and sat down, never taking my eyes off their faces. "The FBI will arrest you both tomorrow morning. The charges include wire fraud, mail fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. You're looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Your assets will be frozen, your reputations destroyed, your lives ruined." "Unless," Eric asked desperately. "There is no unless. This isn't a negotiation. It's a sentencing hearing. And I'm the judge, jury, and executioner." I stood up and gathered my papers, leaving them sitting in that empty factory with the weight of their crimes and the certainty of their punishment. "You wanted to play games with my life," I said as I reached the door. "Well, congratulations. You just lost the biggest game of all." The next morning, I watched from my office window as FBI agents arrested Eric outside his apartment and Vivian at her downtown office. The local news crews were already on the scene, broadcasting live coverage of the Millbrook embezzlement scandal to viewers across the state. My phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, clients expressing support, friends offering congratulations on clearing my name, but I ignored them all. There was only one call I wanted to make. "Terry, it's Nick, it's over. I saw the news. How do you feel?" I thought about that for a moment. How did I feel? Vindicated, victorious, satisfied? "I feel like I finally know who I really am," I said, "and I like what I see." 3 months later, Harrow & Associates was thriving again. My reputation had been restored. My business was growing, and I'd been featured in Architectural Digest as an example of how integrity and perseverance could overcome any challenge. Eric and Vivian both pled guilty to avoid trial. Eric got 12 years in federal prison. Vivian got 8. Sienna lost her real estate license and left town in disgrace. I kept the house. The judge ruled that Vivian had forfeited any claim to marital assets through her criminal conduct. Sometimes I walk through those rooms and remember what it felt like to trust someone completely, to believe in love and family and all the other fairy tales people tell themselves. But I don't miss those feelings. They made me weak, vulnerable, easy to manipulate and betray. The new Nick is harder, smarter, more careful about who he trusts. The new Nick doesn't believe in second chances or forgiveness or redemption. The new Nick plays to win. And in the end, I held all the cards.